Escoffier is the new 5-star character coming in version 5.6, and in this video, I'm going to analyze and discuss her kit in detail. We'll look at how her skill and burst work, what her passives and constellations offer, and how her design fits into current team comps. Whether you're thinking about pulling or just curious about her role, this breakdown will cover everything you need to know. Save up to 23% on the current banners at lootbar.gg. All you need is your UID and server. The link is in the description. First, just looking at her base stats and weapon, she's got 13,348 base HP, 347 base attack, and 732 base defense, with a crit rate bonus stat that reaches 19.2%. That already tells you something. While she doesn't hit the highest base attack numbers we've seen on 5-star polearm users, that bonus crit rate helps her scale without needing to fish for substats. She's not built like a traditional main DPS either. Her strength lies more in her utility and how she interacts with the team. Now, her normal attacks are nothing groundbreaking. 3 quick spear strikes, a charged upward thrust that eats up stamina, and a standard plunge attack. Pretty basic stuff. You won't build her around those, but that's fine, because her real value kicks in with her skill and burst. Her skill has 2 modes depending on whether you tap or hold it, and both are pretty distinct. If you tap, she summons a mechanical assistant that follows your active character around and periodically fires cryo projectiles. These frozen parfaits, as they're described in-game, deal cryo damage based on 216% of Escoffier's attack at level 10, and they keep going for a full 20 seconds. That's a long uptime and solid for consistent cryo application in freeze teams. She also triggers an Aussia-aligned AoE cryo attack at intervals while this assistant is active, adding that extra layer of utility in Fontaine's Archie combat mechanics. If you hold the skill instead, the assistant switches to a stationary mode. It doesn't follow you but absorbs elemental energy from attacks in the area. Her burst is where things start to get really interesting. It deals a huge AoE cryo hit. We're talking 1067% attack scaling at level 10, and it heals all nearby teammates at the same time. The healing itself is also based on her attack. 309.7% plus a flat 2,373, and that's instant team-wide healing. On top of that, using her burst also activates a healing over time effect for 9 seconds, which restores HP at intervals based on 138.24% of her attack. So she's not just a one-time burst healer, she has follow-up healing that helps your team stay topped off through ongoing fights. This also means you don't need to build a separate healer if you're running Escoffier. She's like a cryo version of a hybrid healer DPS support, and that flexibility is pretty rare. But her value doesn't stop at healing. One of her passives adds a really powerful resistance reduction effect. When you hit enemies with either her skill or burst, she lowers their cryo and hydro resistance for 12 seconds. The catch? The amount depends on how many cryo or hydro characters are in your team. 1 cryo or hydro character gives you a 5% resistance shred, 2 gives 10%, 3 gives 15%, and if you go all in with a full hydro cryo party, you get a massive 55% resistance reduction. That's actually insane. Just for context, most other characters with resistance shred cap out around 15% to 20%. So she's pushing the ceiling here, but it comes with the price of restricting your team comp. This really pushes her into freeze comp territory. Teams like Ayaka Kokomi suddenly get even stronger when you slot in Escoffier. She applies cryo regularly, buffs cryo damage by reducing enemy resistance, and heals without demanding field time. It's a pretty ideal support kit for that archetype. Now, Constellations. Her first constellation is simple but strong. If the whole team is made up of hydro and cryo characters, her skill or burst gives everyone nearby a 60% increase to their cryo critical damage for 15 seconds. That's huge. Constellation 2 adds a mechanic where she generates 5 stacks when she activates her cryo assisting mode with the skill. If a teammate deals cryo damage, one of those stacks is consumed to boost that hit by 240% of Escoffier's attack. That's big, but there's a catch. If the cryo hit damages multiple enemies, 1 stack is consumed per target. So it burns through quickly in AoE but shines against bosses and elites. Constellation 4 extends the healing over time effect from her burst by 6 seconds and adds a chance to double the healing and restore 2 energy. That chance scales with her critical rate, which again ties into her base stats, so it synergizes naturally with how she's built. Constellation 6 is where things go from supportive to explosive. While the assistant is in the mobile mode, every time the active character hits an enemy with a normal, charged, or plunging attack, the assistant can fire off an extra cryo projectile. These hit for 350% of Escoffier's attack as AoE cryo damage and count as skill damage. The cooldown is just 0.5 seconds, and it can trigger up to 6 times per summon. That's a ton of added cryo output, especially in fast-hitting teams. What I find cool about her kit is how modular it is. You can build her with full attack for healing, lean into elemental mastery for reaction-based comps, or even focus on crit stats to maximize her constellations. She can fit into a freeze team, provide healing for a mono cryo setup, or just be a solid off-field cryo applier. That said, she does have limitations. She really wants to be in a cryo hydro team. If you try to throw her into a pyro-electro mix, you lose a lot of her value. No resistance shred, no cryo-crit DMG buff, and fewer synergies overall. She's not as universally plug-and-play as someone like Farina or Bennett, but in the right comp, she can absolutely carry the team's utility. Personally, I see her as a specialist. In the right hands and the right comps, she's powerful, flexible within that niche, and brings a lot to the table. But if your roster is more generalist or focused on reaction-heavy teams like Vaporize or Overload, she might feel a little out of place. Now, if you're planning to build a strong team around Skirk, Escoffier is definitely a character to keep in mind. Her kit naturally supports cryo-based teams with consistent off-field cryo application, team healing, and powerful resistance reduction. All of which will work really well with Skirk's playstyle, especially if you're leaning into freeze setups or just want to maximize her cryo damage output. The fact that Escoffier can reduce cryo resistance by up to 55% when paired with enough hydro or cryo characters is a huge deal. That alone can boost Skirk's damage significantly, especially in teams built to keep enemies frozen and vulnerable. And on top of that, Escoffier's healing gives your main DPS more breathing room to stay on-field longer, which is a good match for characters like Skirk who benefit from consistent uptime. So if you're already planning to pull for Skirk, or you're saving for her in a future rerun, it's definitely worth considering Escoffier as a core part of that team. She brings strong utility and fits into a cryo-hydro team structure that naturally complements Skirk's strengths. Anyway, what do you think? Planning to pull for Escoffier? Already thinking about who you'll pair her with?